This episode is brought to you by Crystal Lake Entertainment Ad Space. Advertise on the Coffee Fueled Stories podcast, the ideal platform for promoting your book release or sale. Your ad, 30 or 60 seconds long, will be featured at both the start and end of an episode, reaching a dedicated audience of horror and dark fiction readers. This is a perfect opportunity to increase visibility and connect with your target audience. See link in the show notes for details, or go to crystallakepub.com/shop. Crystal Lake Entertainment presents Coffee Fueled Stories. Hello, hello, hello. It's me, Michelle, your host and pocket DJ of Coffee Fueled Stories, a show where storytelling and coffee hang out. This week's special guest, who survived a hurricane, is Lisa Vasquez. Hello, welcome to the show.
Hi, Michelle. How are you?
I'm great. So I'm doing something with you. You are the only one I'm ever going to do this with. The show is
I've heard that a lot.
The show is completely unscripted. I normally have notes and questions, a list of things. I literally have 2 things to keep me on point, but other than that, it's going to be completely unscripted. It's just going to be us just chit-chatting, bouncing ideas, sharing, talking, all of that good stuff. So I would like you to let the listeners know a little bit more about you before we deep dive into these fabulous books and Memento Mori Inc. magazine.
Awesome. Well, you're very brave to do that unscripted because, my brain can go everywhere. But so she said, I'm Lisa Vasquez. I am the CEO and owner of Memento Mori magazine, which is partnered with Crystal Lake Entertainment. Very, very lucky to have Joe as my partner. So I want to give him credit where it's due. But we rebranded. We were House of Stitch magazine before, and then we came to Joe and we said, "Hey, listen, I'm not really publishing full time anymore, and I have this fantastic magazine. I think it would work better with your pub house." We talked about it for a little bit, and we decided to go ahead and rebrand it and go for it. So I'm really excited to be back behind the desk. So we took a little hiatus for about 3 years and came back and was able to do this, and I'm pretty excited about it. The other thing is I still run the pub house, but just for like maybe 4 or 5 people. So it's very, very, very small. We do 2 anthologies a year right now. So we have the Deviance and Decadence kind of series, and then we have the Vixens of Horror series that we do every year. That's an annual thing. And then, of course, I am an author and I am an artist. So I think that's all I can remember right now. A little bit of everything.
That's a lot of creativity coming out of you, and I can't wait to ask you questions and to tap into that. First question, however, is do you happen to have a copy of Deviance and Decadence with you right now, readily available?
I thought to bring it, but I was like, no, I'm sure she has it.
Well,
I did not put it in front of me, so I'm sorry.
No worries. I was going to ask if you would do a live reading of I Am, the poem in there, because I absolutely love it and it would be so cool. But oh my God, it is so like, what a way to introduce the book. Like, I mean, with the exception of obviously you had the author note and the forward, but that was the first piece. That was me getting to know you with your words. And I just was like, wow, I would love to have her do a live reading to bring us into this book, because
thank you.
Holy crap, this book is like wowzers. So you also oubliette is like one of my favorite words. And
I love that word.
I think the first time I learned it was watching Labyrinth. Thank you, David Bowie. Right?
Exactly.
I was like, what is an oubliette? And I immediately, because I had it on VHS, because you and I are we're like that Gen X. And so
Yeah.
I'm watching it. I got it for Christmas. It was a Christmas present. I'm watching it for the first time, and oubliette, obviously they do explain it in the movie. However,
Right.
me being the little word nerd that I was,
Yeah.
I ran immediately to the dictionary and looked it up, and just I was like, that is one of the most delicious dark
Yes.
words.
Yes. And it sounds so pretty, but it's so mean. It's so, like you said, it's so dark, but it is such, this is a pretty word. It's like oubliette. And you're like, oh, isn't that pretty? And then you're like, no,
Oh
it's
no,
really not.
it's not. It's a place where you get left to die.
It's, yeah, with
Or
yourself.
forgotten, or forgotten,
Yeah,
yes.
exactly. Mhm.
But yeah, so the fact that you have, I've got my little note here, one of my favorite words, thanks David Bowie and Labyrinth. But yeah, just beautiful. And then you have the artwork. So you do book covers,
Mhm.
you paint. Now, are you a painter as well? Is that another thing to add to your belt of awesomeness?
Yeah, so I work with mostly acrylics, but I do some like ink. I love to use ink and then watercolors as well. Mhm.
Wow. Yeah, this is the woman with the skull, and like it's fabulous. It's beautiful and eerie at the
Mhm.
same time.
Yeah. Now
Um,
the book cover is stock. So I want to make that real clear because I don't want to take
oh,
credit for
okay.
somebody else's work. But I did do the blending and sort of like the putting the pictures together. And I did do a little bit of the art, like the strings and things like that. So it is stock. People can find it on Shutterstock, and I want to give full
Okay.
credit to that artist for that. But I did do like I put things together and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and you have it throughout, you've got some art throughout the book,
Yeah, that is mine.
drawings. I was gonna say
Hmm.
that is yours. Midsummer Nightmare.
Yeah.
Okay. Like seriously, the stories in here are just so wild. Like I literally felt like I went on a roller coaster reading
Yeah,
this
that was
book.
the intention. So you got it.
And I was like, wow. And so it's a collection of Deviance and Decadence is a collection of short stories. Just blown away with these tales. And then of course you also have this awesome other book here, The Unfleshed Tale of the Autopsic Bride. Did I say that right?
Yes.
Wow, just a word journey. So let's talk about Deviance and Decadence first.
Okay.
How long, like, did you write that in like a short amount of time, or is that like a collection of writings that you had like over the years? Like, how long did it take you to
Yeah.
do that?
So the poems and Brimstone Manor and Midsummer's Nightmare, those were written in a couple months. So when I decided that I wanted to come back, I decided that, like I said, you got it because when I did this, I was like, I've been gone for 3 years, and this is how the book world is. If you don't write something often, you get sort of covered up in the dirt. I don't care what you do or how much you do or whatever, some sort of way like I mean, it's making way for new people, right? It's making way for new authors. And so when I came back, I thought, you know what? I need to pay dues again. I need to let them know that I'm still here. What better way to do that than to give them a full range of what I do? So the rest of them were kind of things that I had started in the past and then I finished during this time. So when I decided I was going to come back, I was like, fuck it. I'm just gonna come back with a, like slit, throw the door open and be like, I'm here, bitches. So that's what I was
And
trying to do.
I love that. And Brimstone Manor, oh
Mhm.
my God. Like, when I got to the ending, I just went, no, she didn't. Holy shit, she did. Damn. I was not expecting that. I was
Mhm.
not like that one real. Okay, you know when you are on a roller coaster and most of it's in the dark, so very much like Space Mountain, and you don't know
Yeah.
which direction you're gonna go. That is how
Yeah.
I felt. I didn't know where you were taking me on that one, and then when we got to the
Mhm.
end, I just was like, the little car just went in the air brake, and I was like, wow.
Yeah.
So thoroughly, like I said, thoroughly enjoyed your words and the stories in Deviance and Decadence. And
Thank
so
you.
before we nerd out, because there is, so I literally want to put my question aside here, so
Mhm.
that we can just chat about words and things. But I do have
Sure.
one question that popped into my head, I think maybe last night. I was like, I want to ask a question I've never asked before. And I want something that is, because you and I have messaged, off and on, before we chatted,
Yes.
getting to know each other. And I was like, this is the perfect question for Lisa. So here it is. If you and I were at a club waiting to see a band, who are we waiting?
One thing that defines me is that everything in my life, when I talk about a band or music, it's Depeche Mode. So I know people are like, so like, oh God, Depeche Mode again, Lisa. Like, no, like it is so poetic for me. Depeche Mode came at a part of my life where, number one, it was like teen angst, and it was like I was trying to discover who I was, and like, the words. It's not so much just the words, because the words are kind of simple and kind of just simple. Like it's not very deep or complex, but it's in the combination. It's the intent of the words. So yeah, Depeche Mode I grew up with and grew with, because they've changed a lot over the years too. So yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So the fact that you say Depeche Mode, and it's true because, they did. They went through this crazy synth time, and then they
Mm-hmm.
started getting very guitar heavy, and
Yeah.
then they started getting darker. And then of course, obviously because, his life got harder and darker.
Exactly.
And
Yes.
so I
Mm.
love that. I love that you picked Depeche Mode. So as far as I'm concerned, yeah, yeah. So that's awesome. So
Right.
that's awesome. So now I'm gonna put my notes away because that's literally the only question, the official question, the only question I said. It's completely
Mm.
unscripted tonight. I'm doing something completely different because I just want to
Awesome.
get to know you. So let's talk about Unfleshed real quick,
Okay.
like.
Hmm.
So, how long did this one take you? Because this one's meaty. This one's got a lot
Mm.
of, it's dense. There's a lot in there.
Yeah.
How long did that one take you to write?
That one took me about a year to write it. But I'm a slow writer. Like I write really slowly. But with that one, it was the story was there in my head, and I had just started the publishing company. So I just started Stitch Smile Publications, and my mentor is Jeff Brown. So AJ Brown is my mentor, and when we were working together with the pub house, he was like, "Don't give up your dream just because you're helping other people make theirs come true." He's like, "You got to write too." And I had this story stuck in my head, and he's like, I don't know, you got to write it. You got to write it, and just get it out, stop, putting everybody else first kind of thing. So I was like, okay. And then I just decided to keep writing it. It was the first, the first 5 books I think we published as the Pub House. So, I knew I had to get mine out, because if I didn't get mine out somewhere in there, it was going to be like, it was like 5 years before before anything else was published. I was like, let me get it over with, let me get it done, so I could just focus on marketing and doing everything else that I do. So yeah, I mean, it was a fun book. I had this idea in my head. I love historical fiction. I don't. I mean, you'll probably see that in Events and Decadence. I don't know if it's kind of like something I want to get stuck in, but I just love it. Like there's so much you can do with it. And we're always trying to escape the present anyway. There's too much now. Like there's too much now going on that I'm like, no. So it's fun for me to kind of slip into the past a little bit and say, well, what if? And the suspension of belief is a lot easier there too, because we don't know. We don't. Um, when I wrote The Unfleshed, it was supposed to be my tribute and homage to Mary Shelley, because that story is so close to my heart. And I was like, I really want to do something to that. But also, I wanted to kind of like combine a character who could also pay homage to Hannibal Lecter. So I wanted to kind of do a little bit of both and combine them. I thought, F it, let me just go ahead and do it and see if I can make the most hated, you know, main character in a book that I possibly could. So I got a lot of feedback that was, both ends. People either love it or hate it. That's where it comes in. There's really nobody that's like, well, it's okay. No, they either love it or they hate it, and I'm okay with that.
Interesting. Yeah, because I was going to ask you about that. Because yeah, he I don't want to give him airtime.
Yeah.
Um, oh God. It was it was hard to read him, but not hard because of your words. It was hard because he's such a piece of
A
shit.
bad
Like,
guy. Yeah, he's a bad
oh,
guy. Yeah.
oh God.
Yeah.
Yeah. Every time I was like, oh, not this guy again. Like,
Yeah.
oh, can we please Marshall? Can we just give me more Marshall, you know? Like
Yeah, yeah,
give
yeah.
me anybody, Robert. I just
Yes.
like, but yeah. And so so do you plan on doing a prequel, a sequel? Is there
Yeah.
like that is
Yeah. It's
yeah.
a thought in my head. It is the thought in my head, but one thing that I tell people is if you don't write things at certain times in your life, like you outgrow them in a way,
Yeah.
because you write things when you're experiencing certain things, or whether it's good, bad, whether it's a feeling, or I get excited about something. Like it's really hard to go back, but I intend to sometimes. Like the stories in Deviants and Decadence, like I'll go back and I'm like, but they're my babies, and I gotta nurture them. So I don't know when I'll do it. A lot of times I read and I help other people with their mentoring so much, I forget my own stories. Sometimes I have to go back and read my own stories because I'm like, what did I say there? And so, yeah, I do plan on it. I have a couple ideas in my head. I just don't know when because other ideas have popped in and I'm like, oh, I'm really excited about that one. So like I have the Sabella story and I'm redoing the Unsaintly because Unsaintly was my first book and it's shit. I mean, it's absolute shit, but it's my favorite. It's my absolute favorite. I mean, obviously it's my brand, but it was the first book I ever wrote. It came out in 2009. I didn't have an editor. My friends were helping me, and no, I tell them all the time, like, it's no offense to you, you're not an editor. I mean, that it is what it is. I was doing fluffy prose and adverbs all over the place. I look back at it now and I'm like, oh, but I leave it because I do a lot of mentoring. And I'm like, you got to know when you get from point A to point B, you got to see that progress. You've got to. So anything that I'm not like the Unsaintly, I'm redoing it. Right. So if somebody says, oh, I'm reading the Unsaintly, I'm like, oh, yeah, like, okay, but, again, it's my progress. It was my first baby. It's my brand. It's part of me in a way that people don't even understand. Like it is such a part of me. If you want to know what I had gone through emotionally, my spirituality that I was fighting, all of that. Like I have come so like it's like watching yourself as a teenager grow up. All the awkward moments in life that's in that book for sure. Yeah.
Okay, can I just say how happy I am to hear you say how much you appreciate your really, I don't want to say bad book, but
Yeah.
it's your, okay,
Young,
Be,
young.
there you go, a freshman book, right?
Yes.
Right, your freshman literature, if you will.
Yes.
And the reason I say that is because when I did, I I don't know anything about writing a book. I knew as a child, and this question applies to you. I knew as a child I wanted to be a writer. I thought, how cool would it be to be a writer? I didn't know if it would happen. I didn't know when it would happen. But I hoped that it would happen someday.
Yeah.
And so I was super excited to put my little baby out there.
Yeah.
And was it polished? No. It was edited. It had a story, it had a tale. Like
Mhm.
I am proud of my punk rock baby. That's how I
Yeah.
view it. I view it as Sid Vicious. And so when you were, I loved watching your expression and how happy you were, even though it,
Mm.
like in your mind, you're like, it's not the best thing at all,
Yeah.
but I'm proud of it. And so to hear
Right.
you say that makes me so happy.
Yeah.
So I'm proud of you for that.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, how many people can say they wrote a book and they've had it published? And nowadays it's easy, right? But I mean, to finish a book, what I'm saying is to finish. Everybody starts something, right? But when you can go from A to B and learn how to sit down and write 40,000 words that cohesively make a story, yeah, it's not easy to do. And just the learning that I got from that is priceless. Just priceless. Yeah.
A- Absolutely, absolutely. So then here's my question to you. So
Hmm.
did you always know you wanted to be a writer, artist? Because you're more than just a writer. Like you do
Hmm.
many different creative things. So
Yeah.
let's just focus on writing for right now. So did you always know as a child you wanted to be a writer, that you wanted to write a book of some kind?
No, actually, I love to write for myself. It was my escape. But I don't think in my head, looking back, and of course I answer this question a lot, and but I like answering it because, like I said, in different points of your life, you kind of think back on there. But I don't think ever I was like, oh, I'm going to be a writer. I just knew I wanted to write, right? Um, Actually, when I was younger, I wanted to be a doctor. And so, I'm very scientific and artistic, which is not very common, and it makes a horrible bedmate. It's horrible. But yeah, so it was a little bit of I wanted to be a writer, but I knew I wanted to write, not as a professional writer. When I started to write was in the fourth grade. A teacher of mine encouraged us to do it. And I was so thrilled by it. Like just seeing she would give us one sentence and then seeing how everybody picked up that sentence and made something new of it. I was so thrilled by that. Like, talk about nerding out. I was like, do another one, do another one, do another one. I could not get enough of it. So, but we've always been, my stepfather was very artistic. So we grew up in an atmosphere where we would do little skits for the little cameras that they used to have. It was on the cassette tape, and we would do little skits, and that was just part of our life. Like we just did that stuff, and it was like our playtime, right? And he was an artist, so he would draw all the time. I actually didn't start drawing until COVID. I didn't start any art until COVID was my coping. So that even didn't even come into play until then. But writing, I've always been a storyteller, for fun, for myself. It was just my artistic expression. I did role play for a long time. So that always encourages people to come up with stories. And so, and of course, I have four boys. And so, telling them stories to keep them occupied. And reading is just, it was my escape. And so it's my love affair with writing wasn't that I wanted to be a writer, it's just that I wanted it in my life. Yeah.
That is so cool. That is so cool. So creativity was very much fostered in your
Oh,
upbringing.
yes.
That
Oh,
is
yes.
so
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
That is so cool. And I'm assuming you do the same thing with your boys, reading,
Yeah.
writing, all of the fun stuff, creating. So do they put on performances for you guys?
No, I mean, they're all grown now. When I say performance, like my oldest he's special. He he will do anything. Like he runs a Twitch right now for himself. I've walked in the house and he's got like a red wig on, makeup, tube top. Like he doesn't care. He's so free. He does not care. He's shameless. My youngest actually writes for the magazine as well. He's Cameron Fuller. He does the video game reviews. Um, he said hi. And then I have my second oldest. He dabbled a little bit in like art and tattooing, but I think he's still trying to figure out where he's going. And then my third son, he is schizophrenic. So a lot of his creativity, he struggles with now. And I feel really bad for him because it was a big part of his life. He does music. He could pick up any, instrument and play it. He made music. He's still trying to make music. But, when something like schizophrenia, affects you, imagine trying to listen or play music and there's voices and static and things in your brain. So it's a real struggle for him. But yeah, he doesn't really draw as much as he did, but he did. Like that was a huge part of his life until the schizophrenia took over. So unfortunately, he just doesn't do it anymore. Yeah.
That that makes sense. All right. So we are going to have a special treat. Lisa is going to read the poem from Deviance and Decadence, and I'll let you introduce it.
Okay, so this is actually going to be the first time I've read my poetry. This is the first time my poetry has really been out in the public, except one time. I did a poem for House of Stitch. So there is one out there, but I've never read them before. So I'll see if I can adjust my lighting here too, because it looks like I have like a little shadow. Okay. So this basically, this poem, um, like I said, when I came back from my hiatus, um, it was sort of a reintroduction to who I am. And so when I did the poetry, it was another facet of myself that I hid. So nobody really knew that I wrote poetry because I was like, well, I'm not really a poet. I didn't consider myself a poet. I just was like, well, I just want to write poetry for myself. I actually published, and I'm very good friends with James Matthew Byers, who is an award-winning poet. And so as I was talking to him, he would give me little tidbits and things like that. But his work is phenomenal. Like it is outstanding. He did his own version of Beowulf. He does epic poetry. So like a whole ass 40,000 word, poem. So I digress. This was sort of the expose of who I am in this moment. So it's called I Am, and I'll go ahead and read it to you. A glance into the looking glass, a glimpse into the void. A face looks back behind a mask. The whispers, paranoid. Who am I? I ask. No answer was received. Who are you? I ask. No one I could believe. I put my hand against the glass to see if it was real. A note appeared, an epigraph, a message to reveal. Who I am, it began, who I was or who I shall be. A manifested plan, a goddess forged in me. Around me, shadows swarm, a chorus filled with doubt. The face in front is torn, a soul consumed by drought. Reveal yourself, my voice demands. The face begins to shape. A mane of black to silver strands, a cloak of midnight drape. Youth no longer looks at me, but wisdom fills her gaze. Once a wildling, so free, now a queen, born ablaze. I am a bearer of life, the one he calls wife, magic and fire, heresy and ire, Libra and stars, Venus and scars.
That's so awesome. Thank you for doing
Thank
that.
you. No problem.
Like I said, it was I think it was the perfect introduction for the book, like to take you in because
Mm-hmm.
it's and I was like, she has to read that. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. No problem. Yeah, my pleasure.
So I know we are going to talk about Memento Mori and
Mm-hmm.
dive deeper into that. But I want to make sure that I don't forget to ask you questions about, your writing, books, paintings, things of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
So do you do like any book signings, like book fairs? Like, do you go and do all of the book things? Because I know that you're focused on other things, but
Yes.
this is in regard to you coming back to you, so to speak. So
Yes.
do you do any of those things with your
Yeah.
writing?
So this is my first year back doing them. Again, a long, long hiatus. A couple of years ago, I think the last one I was at was Scares That Care. I brought the first year I brought the main staff of Stitch Smile. So I paid for everybody to come down there. We drove down there, and we kind of met up, and it was the most amazing event ever. If you've never been to Scares That Care, there's no words to describe it. If you want to know what a true indie family is, that's where you're going to get your core. I do KillerCon. I will be going back there this year, so I will be doing KillerCon, and then I'm doing the Books and Brews event in Evanston. So actually, it's the reverse. Should be Evanston first, and then KillerCon 9th through 11th of August. So yeah,
Very cool. I actually had Joe Ripple on the show to talk about Scares
yeah.
That Care. So
Joe is amazing, dude. Amazing, dude. Mm-hmm.
he sounded like, and everyone that I've spoken with who has been involved has just nothing but amazing things to say. So
Yeah.
I hope one day to meet him. So to hear
Mm-hmm.
you say that is just like I said, that's totally awesome. So very cool. And then the Books and Brew event, that seems like it's a pretty big event as well. It seems like these,
Yeah.
and I don't know about you, but being that we are of the same age, or close to it, I should say,
Yeah.
I, in my, I'm going to say teenage brain,
Mm,
never did I ever think that author cons, book cons would be what they are today. I don't know about
right.
you, but as a book loving nerdish kid, to
Hmm.
know that other people want to get together and talk about books,
Right.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
I never imagined that would ever happen. So kudos
Yeah.
to
So
everyone who does that.
for scares, I think that's where I'm sure it was going on beforehand, but I just didn't know about it, right? And when I went to scares, I think that was the eye opener where, you expected to be seeing a lot of other vendors, but there were so many authors there. But it was for me, the purpose of going there was to teach the authors how to talk to people because a lot of the authors, first time authors, the first thing you'll see whenever they're at the first, you know, vending whatever event, the first thing they do is somebody walks up to their table and they're like, "Do you read?" Well, yeah, that's why they're standing in front of you. They didn't think it was gonna, read to them. So, just learning how to talk to people, especially when you have such anxiety like I do. Like I have social anxiety, like crippling, but exposure and learning how to do it, I wanted to be able to show that to my people. But the eye opening thing was that so many people wanted to read and they wanted to know about your books and they were coming back and just being like, because sometimes you're like, oh, I'll be back, and then you never see them again. No, they were coming back. That's where I met Tommy Clark, and Tommy Clark had come up and was just like, hey, I have this book and I really need it to be at home with Stitch Smile. And so Tommy and Clark and I became really good friends after that. But yeah, we published his book, and so it forged a lot of friendships on top of that because there are other people who love their craft the same, right? So that was my first eye-opening moment to like, wow, there are other book nerds out there. It didn't die off somewhere, right? There, that it did. People came out of the woodwork, I guess is what I'm trying to say. The words, right? I think being able to go to things like Books and Brews, where you're getting to meet some of the people that you really look up to and the people that you are colleagues with and talk craft over a beer, I'll take it any day. Any day.
Right? Yeah, and like StokerCon. Again, never
Mm,
in my imagination. I remember being 15 years old reading Stephen King. That was on my bedside. Anne Rice was like these were the authors that I was reading as a teenager.
right.
And now there's this huge horror author event.
Yes.
Like so cool. So cool. And then to have John and Lisa on the show, like just
Yeah.
like so cool. So that being said, Memento Mori Inc. magazine is
Hmm.
coming out, and this is what you guys are working on. I feel like you guys are getting ready to unleash a beast, and uh, and so I'm super excited. So
Mm,
I would love for you to tell us a little bit about that before we dive into that, because
sure.
I am super excited.
Yeah. So it's funny that you say unleash a beast because the cover model, Primal, I mean, he's a beast. I mean, look at him. He's huge. He is an influencer on TikTok that I'm friends with. I met him while I was doing House of Stitch. So before we rebranded, I met him doing House of Stitched. And I reached out to him because I was so fascinated by the transitions that he was doing. And I was like, it looks so easy. It's a lot of work. It's ridiculous. And through him, I met DV Bot, who actually I'll digress into that, but she's with us now. But um, they've kind of parted ways on good terms. Everything's good. It just they were going in different directions. But the cover model, it has 5 million viewers on TikTok. I don't even, I can't even wrap my brain around this, right? I have like 1,000 and it took me forever to get that. And the work that goes into what he does and then building up 5 million. And he's done on stage with like Papa Roach and, Ice Nine and a bunch of others that I can't think off of the top of my head. But he's constantly, collaborating with them. He's done videos, and it's all because of, doing these TikToks. But we also, worked with each other for that magazine in the past, and we kind of helped each other with that. So once he got the magazine, it did help him a little bit. So he came back to me and he was like, let's do it again. Let's do it again. So people don't know this, but he was actually one of the reasons why I brought it back, because I had been toying with the idea, but I thought, I don't know, maybe yes, no. I mean, I really wanted to do it, but last year I was still pretty sick from everything that had happened. So I was like, I don't want to go too fast, too hard. But then I was like, man, I love doing this magazine. I really, really do. So when he came to me and he was like, out of the blue, he's like, let's do it again, Lisa. And I was like, that's my sign. I can't ignore it at that point. So what it is, the magazine, there are so many other magazines that are great in their niche, right? Some do short stories, some are splatter, some are sci-fi. What was missing to me was give me the real behind the scenes. Give me the frustration, the screaming, the why did I do this? Why did I start this? Those kind of things that go on behind the scenes. And it's not easy getting people to open up about those, right? Like, they always want to put that good face forward, right? But we're slowly starting to get, artists to open up about it. I've always been really honest. Like, people ask me, like, what would be your advice for somebody who wants to start a publishing company? And I always tell them, don't, don't do it unless you are so committed to, like, don't be a writer and don't be doing all these other things, because one thing you're going to have to do is you're going to have to put these other writers first, right? It's not easy saying like, okay, I'm gonna put my stuff aside and let this person be the spotlight. It was easy for me because I don't like the spotlight, but but I did want to write. And so I just told him, like, if you are not 100% in it and you're not willing to lose money sometimes, like, don't do it. It's not glamorous, right? It's a very hard job. So that's what I'm trying to get other people to say when talking about their craft. And so far, I have gotten people to say, yeah, it's a fantastic journey, but I'm a starving artist. Like, I don't have money, and or I had no money at first, and these are some of the things we had to go through to get money, and it wasn't, all fun and games. And you think you just draw a picture and everybody buys it for $3,000. That doesn't happen, So I've talked to a lot of people that will open up and say that, and that's what we need to hear. That's the truths that we need to hear. Like, if you're going to be an artist, if you're going to do this, we make it look easy because it's a lot of work, and because we're devoted to it and we're committed to it. It's like a sport. You don't see the knee, the shin splints, you don't see the injuries, you don't see all that. You see, the people running out onto the field and being $1 million players. That comes with a lot of sacrifice. So that's what we're trying to do with the magazine. Just talk about the stuff that goes on behind the scenes, the process, the advice that they should have taken, that they would give, things like that. So that's pretty much what we're doing. Just not a lot of short stories. We do like a slash flash contest. But other than that, we try very hard, unless it's a featured person, we try really hard not to do the short stories, because that's the other magazines, they do that and they do it very, very well. So, yeah.
Very cool. So did you have that in mind when you were thinking about the magazine? Like you said, you're like, okay, when you thought about your niche, how did
Mm-hmm.
you think, I think we should do a behind the scenes. Like, how did
Mm-hmm.
that come up? That's that's a very cool idea. And so I'm curious to know, like, was that,
Mm-hmm.
a spaghetti that one of the noodles that you threw on the wall, or was that something that you knew right off the bat?
I knew that idea came when we were at Scares That Care. Everybody was there, my mentor and I, and all of us. We went out. So we did the convention. We went out afterwards. We had a blast because it's historical area there. We went walking around. We just did all kinds of stupid, crazy things. And then afterwards, all of us. So there was, I want to say about 10 of us, sat down and talked shop. And I was like, and my mentor and I, it would always end up like they would kind of walk away because we could just get on something for hours and hours. And they would kind of wander off and, do their own thing. But he and I would just sit there and kind of go at this for hours. And I'm like, what we really need to do? We really need to have these conversations, but bring other people into it, because when you talk about storytelling, when you talk about the process, when you talk about something that you love so much, the process is the best thing. And the first thing people would ask us all the time is, well, where did you get your idea from? And well, I've always wanted to write. Like, what should I do? And they're always asking about the process. They're curious, even if they don't want to write. They're curious themselves. So I thought, well, why don't we write about it? Let's do it. Let's do something like that. So that's what we did. We just started writing, and I wanted to be open to all the arts. So it's not a horror magazine. And that's what we kind of got branded at first because we were sort of like getting branded in a horror genre, which I was trying so hard to pull back from. But it's dark. So it's dark fantasy, dark sci-fi, anything that's got a darker element to it, crime, noir, anything like that. So we try to open it up to expand that because you can really apply every lesson that you learn from them to everything. We had a tattooist. We had let's see what else we have. We had an artist. I mean, I can't even just like there's so many, like I can't even like pinpoint them all out. We have cosplayers, we have actors, we had all kinds of things, and everything that they were doing, you could apply it. As a matter of fact, speaking of Stoker, we had Dacre Stoker in one of the magazines, and also there's another Stoker that people didn't know about until recently, Shayna Stoker. And so we were the first ones to kind of pull them out and say, hey, let's interview you and talk about that, because I mean, Stoker is sort of like the benchmark of horror, right? And but it's not just horror. I mean, people say like Frankenstein is horror, but it's sci-fi. It really
Yeah.
is. I
Yeah.
mean, there's just so many different genres and things that nowadays kind of get labeled in a certain way. But again, all these lessons can be applied to any art they're doing, even if it's not dark art. I mean, so
Absolutely. And I love that you like the talking about the process. And this is where I nerd out, and it's about the
right.
process.
Hmm.
I want to know about the process. I want
Yes,
to know those again, it's the stuff that people talk about, but they don't want to talk about, which is kind of odd,
exactly.
which
Right.
is crazy.
Yes.
So
And I
yeah.
think part of it too is like they don't really understand that even the most chaotic artist has a process.
Yes.
They just don't look at it the same way, but they have a process. Like they have a ritual, they have something, even if it is just I look at a blank canvas, I play some music, whatever that process is to get them into the zone, they have one. It's just different, right?
Right. Right.
So it's the safety is knowing that that is your ritual, and that's where you can get into the zone, and that's when you're the most creative. Some people think like, oh, I'm not a morning person, but for me at 5 o'clock in the morning, when I wake up, it's quiet. I can listen to my own music. I can sit with a cup of coffee. Nobody's talking to me. And I'm like, I can get out 5,000 words, if I want to before the world starts. Now, am I exhausted later on? Absolutely. But it is my world to create in. Never in a million years, if you said, Lisa, do you want to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to write? I would tell you to go do something. Like, I feel like, absolutely not. But I found that if I want it bad enough, which I do, I will find time and I will make time. And I trained my brain. How did I do that? The process. I trained my brain to be productive at that time in the morning. So yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. And I totally appreciate that you say that, because writing is also very cathartic. It's very
Yes.
healing. And words have power. And
Hmm.
so, to nerd out with people who want to come together and talk about the craft and talk about the process, and that's what this show is all about. So even though it's where storytelling and coffee
Yes.
meet, however, the writing process is truly the focus.
Yeah.
That's why I was asking you the questions. I didn't even need a script. That's what I'm saying. Like, I wanted to know your process. And I
Yes.
think it's very important, because your process could help someone else.
Right.
And that's the whole point. We are here to help others figure out how to navigate, because I've learned
Exactly.
from people like you. Part of that is putting yourself out there, saying, I am a
Mm.
writer, I am an author,
Right.
I have written, learning, like you were saying, you're this. I don't know how I would ever do at an event.
Right.
Like, all of a sudden I'm just like, I'm totally nervous. I'm like, oh my God, I'm at a booth. What happens?
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
that's
my first time at an event was Comic Palooza, I think Comic Palooza or Comic Con here in Houston. It was my first time. I got a room. Like they asked me to I set out, I was like, hey, I could do this panel. And they're like, okay, do the panel. And they said, if you want, you can ask other people. I didn't really know anybody else. I was like, I know these couple people, you can invite other people. My first panel, I had Joe Lansdale sitting next to me. So yeah, I did the panel, and then afterwards, I was like, okay, thank you, thank you, thank you. I talked to somebody, one of the readers, and people who sat through it came up and started talking to me. I was like, okay, thank you. And then I went directly to the bathroom and threw up. That's my story. So I was like, oh my God, because you're just that adrenaline is like, but part of what got me through, and I tell my authors the same thing, because I do mentor. And the reason why I mentor is because a lot of new authors are coming in and they have no effing clue what to do. And the reason why I mentor is because I don't want other authors to do that. I don't want them to feel like there's a mean girls group, right? But I also want to give them some direction because there's a lot of bad information out there as well. And if you continue to repeat the bad, then you just start getting into some really toxic communities. And I didn't want that. But what I tell them is, for me, what I did was I developed the queen. So that's where the queen came from. She is the unsaintly queen from the book, but I embodied her. And so what I said was, the queen's got to be composed and the queen's got to do this. And she puts on the face. It doesn't matter. She has to do this. So I was able to put on that persona for a really long time and act it out. And so that's what I did. And, it became sort of, like my thing. And so that's why everybody's like, oh, it's the unsaintly queen, because I would go in the long, coat and the crown and all of that. And so it was also fun because I got to dress up in cosplay too. So yeah.
Very cool. And see, in my mind, I'm like, okay, but yes. So, the magazine, your books, your art, we have talked
Mm-hmm.
all of that awesomeness and all of that
Yes,
good stuff. So thank you for sharing.
of course.
Um, the magazine, it drops
Mm-hmm.
on August 30th.
Yes,
Okay.
August 30th. Mm-hmm.
And the t-shirt, the pre-sales, is that still a chance to win the t-shirt? Is that going up
Yes.
until it's released?
No, so the t-shirt, for the chance to win the free t-shirt, that will go until July, the last day of July. So the last day of July, and then, as of August 1st, we're going to pick a date that we're going to go ahead and do a live drawing. So we'll spin the wheel and we'll just do a live drawing that way. So everybody knows it's fair. So we're going to do the live drawing, and then that person will win the t-shirt to go along with their magazine. We're already uploading it. We've already sent it to a couple people to look at. I think Joe's got his own little ARC crew that will look at it. So yeah, it's exciting. It's almost there. We were trying to get a copy for Books and Brews, but I just don't think it's going to happen, unfortunately. They take so long to send out the author copies. I mean, you would think like, oh, well, they can send copies out, 24 to 48 hours on Amazon, but when you try to order them, it's like 3 weeks. So I didn't want to try to send it there to like maybe Tiffany or something, and then all of a sudden it doesn't show up for 2 weeks later. I'm like, well, then I'd have to have her send it back. Like, it didn't make sense to me. So I'm just like, you know what? If it's there, it's there. If it's not, it's not. I can always sell direct from the site. So you can order direct from me. If you order direct from me on the website, of course, we'll have like little, stickers and swag that we'll put in there for you. If you order from Amazon, that's not something that you get. So, but either way, it helps us out a lot. So the pre-sale is where it's at. If you want to see the video interviews for the interview that we do in the magazine, then the only place to find that is through Crystal Lake Patreon. So there's a special tier that you can go there and actually see the interview with Primal, or like this interview that I did last night with Joe Lansdale and Sneaky. We just announced it in our newsletter, so I can finally announce it to you too. Next issue, we'll have Michael Uslan, who is the producer of the Batmans and Joker 1 and 2. We will be interviewing him in October so that we can talk about Joker 2, because right now you can't talk about it. So we're like, okay, let's do it in October. But we wanted to, for the next issue, talk about anti-hero and villain. And so we thought, well, who better to do that with than Batman, right? So we had Joe Lansdale, and we have Michael Uslan. Brian, sorry, I'm clicking a lot. I do this clicking thing. We're talking about nervous, right? So I do this clicking thing when I'm nervous if I'm trying to think of something. So I'm trying to stop doing that. That's a thing that we need to talk about too when we're talking about helping others and speaking is little ticks.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Before I forget,
Yeah.
um, the Memento Mori coffee. So we haven't talked any coffee. So I
Oh,
don't
yeah. We
know.
got to talk about
I
that.
All right. So before we go, we absolutely have to talk coffee because you love coffee. You drink a lot of coffee, and I want to know about your coffee habit. And we also have to talk about Memento Mori Inc. coffee. So
Yes.
that being said, how much coffee do you drink in a day?
So actually, I don't drink a whole lot, but I need the coffee that I drink in the morning. So I will have two big cups of coffee in the morning. The first one usually goes pretty fast, so I'm like, wow, that was fast. But the second one I kind of nurse throughout the day. So I have like a little heating device on my desk, and then throughout the day, I just kind of sip at it until about I don't know. I'll nurse it until about maybe 10:30. And then after that, I don't drink coffee that much unless it's like maybe an iced coffee. So I usually don't drink too much coffee during the I used to be much worse with it, but yeah, once you get older and have some health issues, and you're not really allowed to do that anymore. So that's that. And then for the Memento Mori coffee, so my favorite coffee, I'll be honest with you, my favorite coffee is Greek coffee. So it's very, very powdery. It's very soft. So literally, like when you're done brewing your coffee, you can just wash that out in the sink, right? So that's my favorite coffee. But the Memento Mori coffee is actually pretty good. They have a couple different flavors. I don't know them offhand. So I'm going to be honest, I do not know them offhand, but I know that they do have some really special warm notes to them, which I like. So I don't really like flavored coffee too much sometimes. It just depends on my mood. But I'll put flavor things in them, but I don't like flavored coffee, which is weird. But these have some really nice flavor notes to them.
Nice. In regard to Greek coffee, so I
Yes.
was stationed in Turkey, and I know that Greece and Turkey are not same. However, they both like to have chewy coffee, what I call chewy
Yeah.
coffee. And that's
Yep.
where I learned about. So the very first time I went to a Greek restaurant, my parents allowed me to have coffee. I was like 13. And it's
Uh-huh.
because we were doing the taziography. We all had to turn the cups upside down so that we could
Yeah.
then read the coffee grounds. And like I was 13 and I just thought that was the coolest thing. I was like, oh my God, my parents are
Yeah.
letting me have coffee and it's really thick and
Yeah.
dark and sweet. And of course, because it was sweet, they did it a little bit sweeter.
Yes.
So one of my favorite things is Greek and Turkish coffee because
Yes.
it's just so unique. It's so special.
Yeah.
It's so different. And then of course, who doesn't want to read the coffee grounds, right?
Exactly. Yeah. 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 But
Very
yeah,
cool.
so and the okay, so the Greek coffee that I'm drinking, like I said, it just has a smooth, like a lot of the American coffee, well, American, when I say American, it's like the coffee that you buy here in America has a very bitter taste or a very like burnt roasted taste to it, which is great. Like, I mean, I'm the last one that's gonna, say anything bad about Starbucks. Like, hail Starbucks, right? But as far as the coffee goes in the morning, when you want something nice and smooth, like I can't do it without my Greek coffee in the morning. Like if I do my second cup, sometimes I'll do like the other ones, or of course the Memento Mori coffee. But those are more like I need a kick in the pants to get going in the morning. But if I want just something to sit with while I'm writing, it's going to be my Greek coffee. Yeah.
For sure, for sure. There, like I said, there's something it is, and probably because they've been drinking coffee for a very, very, very
Yeah.
long time. So they know what
Right.
they're doing. They know what they're doing.
Yep.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much for your time, Lisa. It has been truly a pleasure getting to know you and to hear your story. So thank you for so much for your time tonight.
Well, thank you for having me. I had a blast. Thank you so much.
So the last thing I need for you is to say my tagline, which is go forth and be magical. And then we can be completely done with this awesome conversation that was completely unscripted, just for you.
Well, go forth and be magical.